Colin Felter, a PhD student in music theory and history here at University of California, Irvine. And I recently sat down with Adam Neely to chat about public musicology and how his YouTube videos fit in that space. For those that don't know, Adam Neely is a YouTuber with well over 1.5 million subscribers to his channel, and he makes a lot of content regarding music, music theory, music copyright, musicology, and it's facing the public. But while we talked about this public musicology, we ended up hitting a lot of concepts regarding his sense of identity and how these different senses of self play out as one person and content creator. So you're going to get a bit of behind the scenes on how this YouTube content's created, how it plays out in a music theory pedagogy world at large, and also a lot of how Adam views these intersections of performer, educator, YouTuber, one whole sense of self. So let's start with that.
I've always thought of myself as a player and a musician and a composer, and I'm in a scene. And I have done commercial gigs, and I tour, and there's so much of my self-identity which is based on the idea that I am a musician, I am a working musician. And yet the way that most people think of me is as somebody who talks to them on YouTube. And it's been an interesting negotiation between these two identities that I try and present, but hopefully they all kind of come together. That's the end goal with anything.
Yeah.
And I know this is something that probably is near and dear to your heart too, because you're doing something that I've always flirted with, which is going back and getting a PhD, going back into academia and studying it more rigorously. I want the music and the real world experience to inform the academic experience, because that bridge between the two of them is so important for students. But yeah, I mean, it's something that's near and dear to my heart. The people teaching music should be engaged in music outside of the institution.
For sure. And not just looking at music theory as separate from performance. All things come together to form like a general concept of music.
Yeah. The thing that I like about academic research and theoretic knowledge is that it goes deep in a way that sometimes players and sometimes performers don't go. Opposite way of thinking about this is like people so engaged with the theoretic knowledge that there's no action, there's no substance. It's all skeleton, no meat.
On the theory scholarship and writing front, you are deeply in the community through the one video of white music theory and Philip Ewell.
Well, that video, of course, it was a huge one at the time. I was trying to think of engaging with all of these issues of systemic racism and trying to do it with my platform in the most ethical way possible, the way that I could contribute in some way, shape, or form. And so we collaborated a little bit. I sent him the script, and I had a lot of people look over that script because it was, of course, very incendiary.
Yeah.
And then it's been an interesting thing, because in the popular consciousness outside of academia, that video is, of course, very controversial. But there have been a lot of young people who have said that the video had opened their eyes in some ways. Mm-hmm. And I've tried to distance myself from the video. Not necessarily because of the message, but because it's not necessarily my message to give. And so, especially in the months after that video, I had a lot of interview requests. Requests asking me to talk on this. I'm like, no, this is not mine. Yeah. Not mine. And thankfully, most people were eventually found Philip Ewell. It's an interesting one, because in some ways I do want to talk about it a lot more, but I also know that it's not necessarily I don't want to take up the space entirely through it. So I just made the video, said my piece, tried to direct people to the scholars working on it. That was my role.
So why limit yourself at that role? Like, you're describing yourself as somewhat of a music theorist. Why not dive into that camp? I know that most of it is talking about music theory, maybe not being a theorist and theorizing, but where do you sort of draw that line from pointing to doing?
Great question. I mean, I have called myself a music theorist sometimes, but I don't really think of it. I've also called myself a musicologist sometimes, but I don't really think about it. I honestly think of what it is that I do on YouTube somewhere between education and journalism and entertainment too. And so a lot of the stuff that I do on YouTube is really reporting on a story. So it's kind of messy. It's not super rigorous. It's like I'm throwing out all the stuff that I'm finding interesting, and I think there might be an interesting narrative that people can
Mhm.
follow, and then maybe if they're more interested, go down the rabbit hole. But YouTube as a medium is very good for that. I occupy the space that is kind of like as a journalist, and
Yeah.
that's the best way that I like to
That's a great
think
way
of
to
it.
put it. So with the sort of journalistic type of purpose of the content, who would you say is your target audience, or in the public musicology term, they
Yeah,
separate the public from a public.
yeah.
Who is your public?
That's a great question. And it depends on the video. It
Hmm.
depends on the project. The most committed people are young music students, people who are really, who decided that music in some way, shape, or form was going to be a big part of their life. And now I have videos and content and ideas for them to talk about, whether
Hmm.
it's a polyrhythm thing or 7-Eleven polyrhythms, or,
Yeah.
the music theory and white supremacy video, or whatever. They like to use them as like something to talk about. That is like my core audience. However, the public, there are some times, yeah, where I am reaching the public, where
Hmm.
it's like a copyright video where I'm talking about Dua Lipa or whatever,
Yeah.
where everybody has heard of this. And then all of a sudden, this is appealing to anybody who has ever heard a song before. But the idea is that I can talk to the general public and then bring them into this much more detailed world of music theory, music appreciation. It's like a funnel.
So with that, like if it's sort of this journalistic space, but also funneling a group into information that you want to provide,
Mhm.
how do you choose where that funnel goes? In other words, what sort of content are you choosing to make, and how does that fit into how you feel about like your responsibility to
Yeah.
this public?
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest, what gets views, because
Hmm.
that's my job. I
Yeah,
get paid based on that. Like capitalism, baby. I mean, that
yeah,
really drives so much. That said, I know my own strengths and I know what I ethically would want to do, and that's tell a compelling, interesting, worthwhile story in the way that the most people want to watch it, the way that I, Adam Neely, am uniquely capable of doing. I do feel bound by journalistic ethics in terms of
yeah.
like making sure that people are represented the way that they are not misrepresenting people's words, not misrepresenting what it is that they do. I try and make sure that everybody's happy
Yeah,
with how they're being portrayed, which is
definitely.
goes, I feel like, a little bit beyond what typical journalism
Yeah,
is,
it's
which
not
is
just like
trying to
make sure the
find the
facts are
truth.
right. Yeah.
Exactly. Maybe I should make people upset. I don't know.
Well, I mean, you probably do, just not the people that you're interviewing, right? Like if you
That's
or
true.
whoever you're representing, you might make feel good, but in representing them, you have to choose someone that you've not represented, or you have to choose an opposing view that isn't going to be there in some sense. So,
That's true. And this is another thing that I've thought about, is that, we're musicians, our entire thing is playing with other people. It means that
hmm.
we have to be, on at least on some level, very empathetic to other people's points of view. There has to be some kind of like understanding there, because uh, if I, in the pursuit of truth, show something that they don't want seen,
Hmm.
that's a relationship that's,
Yeah, for sure.
that's
All
not a,
networking at some level, you
for
gotta keep the
sure,
bridges afloat.
for sure.
You mentioned a couple times about sort of your current brand. How do you feel about where you have sort of put yourself in music performance and songwriting and YouTube content, and where you'd like to be? Do you feel like you're pigeonholed to a space, or do you feel like you're doing the thing that you want to do most?
It's yes and no to everything.
Yeah, of course. It's all a spectrum.
Yeah, so YouTube is very much a trap in a lot of ways, because I could just do nothing but make YouTube videos all day, every day.
Hmm.
Um, but that's not why I went into music. I went into music to play music and do cool things with different people. And my main project, in all honesty, is playing with my band Sungazer. And to me, that's a huge wish fulfillment. That's amazing. Oh my God, we're
Yeah.
like living a rock star dream for my own original music. And it's interesting because it's such a different side. And there are many people who discover our music, Sungazer, and be like, oh, wow, Adam Neely, I didn't realize you were in Sungazer, which to me is wild, because that's my own personal music that I've been making
Yeah.
before doing YouTube. And that's something that I like. I like the fact that the music and the scene that I'm building exists outside of YouTube, because
Yeah.
YouTube is very much a funnel that you can get stuck in. That's something I think about a lot. I want to create a legacy that exists outside of YouTube, but also the social media scene is so siloed
Yeah.
from institutions, and it is important to have live spaces and the live tradition outside of social media, because otherwise everything will be a 30-second TikTok clip, which is
Yeah.
great. I love those clips. I love
Yeah.
everything about it. It's great. But
But it's
then
not everything to a
exactly,
person.
it should be the entry, and
Yeah.
then live community spaces and live music making with live education. That's weird
Yeah.
that I said that.
That's fun.
Live education should really take that and keep it cultivated.
If you're thinking social media, YouTube, that space is different than the high school university scene. Where do you view YouTube's role and how is it different?
Yeah. So there was something on Twitter I saw where people were talking about YouTube, like how we can use these YouTube videos in the classroom. And that
Hmm.
happens all the time. Somebody will inevitably tag me on social media and be like, "Hey, Adam Neely, I'm watching you in my class." And it feels very strange because, like, all right, now I'm teaching classes. I'm like, people
Yeah.
are supplanting their own curriculum with these videos, which don't really interact with any kind of curriculum,
Yeah, they're not a part of a sequence.
not in any
Yeah.
meaningful way at all. So I've always thought like that makes no sense whatsoever. You can use the language of video essay, the way that I edit a video, to create content for a sequence, but that won't be algorithmically viable.
Yeah.
Honestly,
Yeah.
part of it is so personalized. That is
Mhm.
something that I think is I want to emphasize here, is that it's so based on the personality of whoever is doing the edutainment, as far as like how they interact. And if somebody watches one of my videos, they will be hopefully uh, inspired to check out different things and change their worldview in a certain way. I might mention something briefly in a video about 5/4, and somebody might pick something up on that, but then I might be like, okay, well, take 5 was done in 1959, and that's one example of 5/4. Okay, well, let's talk now about Dave Brubeck and
Yeah,
his mission to the State Department thing that he did in Istanbul.
for
And then
sure.
like now let's talk about the history of jazz diplomacy. And so it's all
Yeah.
this like stream of conscious thread. I personally want to make much bigger connections beyond
Hmm.
one simple idea. I don't know.
So with
I'm
that, like,
yeah,
I feel, I'm probably not your target audience in some sense. I've
no.
been gigging. Now I'm doing a PhD. I'm informed on the subjects that you're speaking. There's a lot of stuff I don't know, but
Right.
when I do watch one, it feels like I have the inside knowledge and can connect those dots. And it's
Hmm.
hard to watch it from the perspective of someone who might not have that inside knowledge and not connect the dots. Do
Hmm.
you think that it is important for that knowledge to be there?
For sure. And that is something I do think about. And I've changed how I write certain scripts because of that. Because there
Hmm.
was an earlier Q&A video where somebody was asking about whether or not a fourth is considered a dissonance. I didn't clarify a lot of things.
Yeah.
And then there was like a kid, like a 14-year-old kid or something like that. I was playing bass and somebody came up to me. It's like, oh my God, are you Adam Neely? I'm like, hey, how's it going, man? And he started talking about how he was trying to convince his teacher that Adam Neely said that the fourth is a dissonance. And I'm like, there's context there.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Yeah.
And
That's a perfect example. Yeah.
yeah. So I've been a lot more careful with basically every detail like that, where you might not fully understand a subject, but at least you'll walk away with hopefully an understanding that it is a complicated subject
Yeah.
and that there isn't a simple answer. It's not as effective an argumentative
Yeah.
technique. I will always say, like, sometimes
Yeah.
this is how I hear it. This is how
Insert
I feel it.
ambiguity here so that way.
I insert so much ambiguity in recent scripts from the past year or two for that reason. I have such influence that I don't want to get something
Yeah.
wrong, so I try not to.
For sure. Yeah. There's got to be a little ego involved too, right? We don't want to put ourselves out there and then be told we're wrong. You have
Of
the
course, yeah,
honesty of who you're representing, but also the honesty of yourself and ego.
yeah,
Being
which is let me tell you, is heightened far beyond anything on social media. Being
Mhm.
like, it's ego is a big thing. You want to be right, but um, like people will tell you you're wrong, especially my community will tell me that I am wrong,
Yeah,
because the kinds of people that watch my videos are often very like engaged. They're very sweet, very empathetic people, but they also know a lot of things about
yeah,
music and they want to share that.
for sure.
So I owe
You
it to
provide
them
them the platform through your wrongness.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
which is honestly useful. Mainly I'm worried about misrepresenting somebody's music. That's really the main worry.
A general public musicological wrap up. Let's put yourself in the mind of that target public. You have a new Neely out there. How would you most want to rehash your music education with the public facing musicology at your disposal now?
Sure, yeah. I thought about this. I still think that universities and traditional education is the way to go.
Mm-hmm.
And for no other reason than that is still the surefire path to meeting other young, hungry musicians who will inspire you and create the next culture, next musical
Mm-hmm.
culture. Um, yeah, the YouTube is something that I would have freaked out about when I was young. It is like, it's incredible. It's amazing, all the stuff that's out there. And I would have freaked out and I would have consumed everything. But I also know that the most meaningful experiences were playing with other people, meeting friends, talking about music that we were checking out. Uh, that is so much more important in the long term. So I think that it's icing. Like all
Mm-hmm.
of this stuff is icing. Maybe not icing, maybe something that's like maybe a little bit more nutritious, but it's not the main meat of the it's the sauce. It's a
Yeah.
sauce.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll do a sauce metaphor. It's the sauce on top of a lot of music education, but it definitely is not the meat,
Yeah.
and it definitely isn't the structure. It definitely isn't the bone. Um,
So many food analogies.
oh my god, I
Through.
think I'm just hungry. I haven't eaten lunch yet.
It comes
Yes.
out, man.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that there still very much is a place and will always be a place.
Yeah.
But it relates to it in a way.
Being able to have your platform of education in your community around you, but still having it informed by the scene at large. And that scene now includes the sauce of YouTube music education in a way, music journalism, keeping that musicking alive through connecting all of these dots through maybe a centralized university type.
Yeah, it's always better for the people teaching to also be doing. To teach and to do is the whole unified self.
Man, unified sense of self. Adam hitting us heavy there at the end, turning it back into that sense of identity and how it plays out in these different contexts. Hope you enjoyed it, and I appreciate you watching along, and thanks to Adam for sitting down and having this conversation.